Today we have every single Chief in the lineup. I'm going to compare each one of these, and so if you're looking at a Chief, this video is for you, man, because I will talk about some of the biggest differences between the bikes, and I will also tell you which one I like the best and why. What we have here, we have the Sport Chief, we have the Chief Dark Horse, we have the Chief Bobber Dark Horse, and we have the regular Chief out on the floor. Now, if you are a Chief aficionado, you may say, hey, where's the Super Chief Limited? No worries, I will be mentioning that bike. They unfortunately don't have one here, but because I've spent enough time with that bike, I'll be able to mention some of the things on that one as well. This is all big thanks to American Biker here in Lansing, South Carolina. They let me come out, pull these bikes out, and let y'all know the biggest differences between each of them, what I like, what I don't like. So if you need anything like a new Chief or one of the many other vehicles they have, come talk to Rob at American Biker. Again, big thanks to those guys. First thing I want to start with is the seating position. We'll start on the Sport Chief here. This is the only one with a gunfighter seat, so it's a little bit different, and basically it has more of a ledge to keep your butt planted. So what you'll notice is we actually have a 6.5-inch rise on these bars. We have just a slight pullback. I got a 4-gallon tank here. I'm sitting straight up, and then I just lean out just a little bit over to the bars here. And so because of that rise, even though it's more of an aggressive stance, I still am a little bit more comfortable. I have just a slight arch in my back. I'm not bent over the tank by any means. This is a really comfortable setup when you think about a sportier motorcycle, okay? Especially in the cruiser lineup. This is super comfortable, and it's all thanks to that 6.5-inch rise. Now, the Chief Dark Horse. You'll notice I don't have nearly as much of a rise on this one. Same 4-gallon tank, and I'm a little bit more bent over the tank, and also my arms are down just a little bit more. And so if you're coming from sport bikes or you just want a really aggressive stance, this is a good way to go because you're going to get that aggressive stance with this bike. Now here's a huge difference. We have the Chief Bobber Dark Horse. So with those mini apes, now my arms, if you check those out, I am almost totally relaxed. Now, granted, I would prefer a little bit taller of a rise and more of a pullback, but compared to these others, this for me is the most comfortable position, at least of these bikes out here. The Super Chief Limited is almost set up the same way, where I have a little bit more pullback, and so if you're looking for comfort but you still want a ripper, this is the way to go. This one's going to be set up just like the Chief Dark Horse, except it's got some other differences we'll talk about, but the seat is also different from the Bobber to this one. The Bobber has the most firm seat out here, while the Chief and the Chief Dark Horse actually have a little bit more plush to the seat. They're all solo seats though, except for the Super Chief Limited, which actually gives you a 2-up setup straight from the factory. Now I did want to mention that some of your smaller differences, like your lean angle, your weight, your seat height, all of these things are really close. I think the heaviest one we have is the Super Chief Limited, 739 pounds. The rest of these range from 675 to right under 700. So they're all essentially the same as far as that. When it comes to the lean angle, you might be 28.5 degrees on one, 29.5 degrees maybe on the Sport Chief. So they're very close. The rake on all of them is similar, and the seat height, 26 inches roughly to about 26.2 inches. Okay, so all of those things are about the same. I just really want to cover the biggest differences here. Let's talk about the aesthetic differences. When you look at all these, the Chief and the Chief Dark Horse are actually open in here, right? You got your headlight bezel right there, and it's just totally exposed. All of them have bobbed fenders. One thing on this one is you actually get the 19-inch cast aluminum wheel in the front. All blacked out. We move to the Chief Bobber Dark Horse, and besides your seat and some of the other things that we've talked about, you actually have an enclosed area right here, so it's really a clean look. It hides all those wires, the cables, and all that good stuff. And you also have these big fork tube covers right here. You also have them on the rear shocks that we'll talk about here in a minute, but what that does is that kind of is like a tribute to the old days of bobber motorcycles. One other thing is you actually have a 16-inch spoked wheel on this bike, as opposed to, again, the 19 and 16 that you have on the rest of the motorcycles. Changes the way it rides a little bit, but obviously you do have that aesthetic difference with the wheel as well. The Chief Dark Horse right here, basically the same setup, minus a couple of things that we'll talk about. And then of course the Sport Chief is probably the most different one out here anyways. You have this quarter fairing, 6.5-inch screen. You also have the only bike out here that has inverted front forks. These are KYBs, by the way. And this does give you a little bit more ground clearance, especially in the rear. Another thing that you have on this bike is you have the specialized wheels just for the Sport Chief. And this is the only bike with dual disc up front, and it actually has your Brembo brakes as well. By the way, the Super Chief Limited also has a 16-inch wheel, spoked wheel at that, okay? Another thing that I had mentioned here is the rear shocks. They're all preload adjustable. The difference here on the bobber, of course, is you have that enclosed spring there. And so again, that just kind of pays tribute to bobbers of old, right? You also have the preload adjustable on your Chief and your Chief Dark Horse right there. And then one of the most significant changes from these other bikes to this one is the Fox rear adjustable shock. Not only do you get more travel in the shock, but when it comes to the most comfortable ride out of all these, this one wins hands down. Those Fox shocks do such a great job of just absorbing every imperfection in the road. And as you guys know, I live in South Carolina and I know imperfect roads probably better than anybody. This right here is one hell of an upgrade. All right, so what you'll notice here is all of these have mid controls except for the Chief Bobber. And so my feet are essentially going to be right up underneath me. You can see my knees are bent a little bit. The Super Chief Limited and the Chief Bobber Dark Horse actually give you forward control straight from the factory. Now all this stuff can be changed, of course, but I'm just talking about factory options. But when it comes to this, of course, having mid controls is just going to give you a little bit more aggressive of a stance. Or do you want something that's a little bit more comfortable with your feet more out in front of you? Also, another difference between the bikes is going to be the ride command and the way the ride command is positioned. So you'll notice here on the Sport Chief, it is the most different setup as far as where this sits. You got your riser clamp right here, and then of course we got our screen down below that. Also, just so you know, the ride command in and of itself is worth the upgrade. You get navigation, you of course get weather updates on the fly, you're going to get your Bluetooth, you're going to get bike information, you're also going to get a digital display, of course, but you get your analog tachometer, you get your analog speedometer, and you can change between multiple different screens depending on what you like. This system right here, like I said, is worth the upgrade. When we compare that to the regular Chief, you're going to get the analog speedometer and then a digital tachometer. And of course you do still get sport modes on here, but it's just a cleaner look with the ride command and of course more information. And then of course we will lose that Bluetooth button that we have on the other bikes. And this is what I was talking about with the forward controls. So not only is my seating position and my bars a little bit more comfortable, but my feet are out in front of me as well. And so when it comes to positioning and comfort, the Super Chief Limited and the Chief Bobber Dark Horse are the way to go if that's what you're looking for. Also, my line of sight on the ride command between this bike and the Chief Dark Horse are a little bit better, whereas it sits lower on the Sport Chief. I actually like it better right here because I don't have to take my eyes as much off the road. I just a quick glance down and I'm right there. And so the last thing that we'll talk about is the motor. We got the red-headed stepchild over here in the Chief. That's the only one with the 111. The rest of these have the Thunderstroke 116. And so each one of these are 120 foot-pounds of torque, 125, and none of them are hurting for torque. But when you get on the 111 compared to the 116, you will notice a significant difference. And so that coupled with the ride command really makes a huge difference to me personally. I think those two things would make me lean, if I'm just looking at a regular Chief, more towards the Dark Horse. So that's just something that you have to consider, right? It's going to be a couple more $1,000, $3,000, something like that. difference there in pricing. So it really just depends on you and your budget. The 111 is no slouch, don't get me wrong, but the 116 is just more torquey and it's a little bit smoother. I really like that engine a lot. So you also, of course, have the Super Chief Limited, which has the 116 as well. So which bike do I like the best? Well, for me personally, I always tend to gravitate towards comfort. And so when I look at the pricing difference here, if I was just looking at a regular Chief, I'd go with the Dark Horse. But overall, I like the Bobber. But the Super Chief Limited is still my favorite Chief out of all of them. I get my bags, I get a decent sized windshield, and I get the comfort that I'm looking for in a motorcycle. The forward controls, the handlebars, the 116 Thunderstroke, all of that stuff suits my needs better. If I'm looking at a bike where I want to, let's say, take it up in the mountains, you know, maybe ride more curvy roads and that kind of thing, I'm stuck between the Dark Horse Bobber and the Sport Chief. What really would make me lean more towards the Bobber is just purely how comfortable it is. With the Sport Chief, which I'm a huge fan of, by the way, I would really have to get a different set of bars altogether. Although I like the Rise, I need more of a pullback for me personally, and then I would have to do the forward controls. And so I'm really stuck between these two bikes, but these are my favorite bikes out here currently. Man, it's really a toss-up. Aesthetically, the Sport Chief, the wheels, the Sport Chief, the dual disc brakes, the Sport Chief. It just, all of it, and especially those rear shocks and the front shocks. Man, it's really tough, but I actually I might go with the Sport Chief, honestly. I would make those small changes that I was talking about, and I just like that bike so much more than the rest of these, although this is a close second, or actually third, because Super Chief Limited is my favorite. That's where I'm at with it, man. It's really a tough decision, but it's these small changes that are gonna make the biggest difference when you're looking at a lineup that has so many different models. So I'd love to hear from y'all, man. Which Chief did you end up going with, or which one do you like the best and why? If you like this video, maybe you'll like one of these other ones that I've done here recently. Big thanks to you guys. See you in the next one, and as always, hold them down.